I actually want to tell a story about a breakup I went through about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And it's my story of the things that went through my head and my story of what happened. And so the situation is that I was confronting my girlfriend about her feelings for her housemate. And to which she responds, I really, 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 really like him. And that sucked to hear. And the following weeks were really challenging for the two of us. We had a lot of really difficult talks. And we know we're going to do this or we're not going to do this. The most challenging thing that I had to go through was a conversation we had where I asked her if I hadn't have confronted you, would you have told me? And she said, no, I would rather keep these things to myself and hope that they would kind of go away. And that's what really shook me to my core. That's where I really started to doubt if things were going to work between the two of us, if we were really going to make it or not. And I spiraled for quite some time. I started questioning past memories. I started looking at what we were potentially going to do in the future, because how could I trust somebody if she wasn't going to be so upfront about her feelings? What if it happens again? And that's what the conclusion of that spiraling was. It was, well, I can't trust her. How can I love somebody if I can't trust them? You can't have a loving relationship without trust, right? And at the time, I'd been reading some books. There was one in particular, The Mastery of Love, it's called, where the author he paints a picture of unconditional love, and that's just what it is. It's love without condition. It's not I love you because I trust you. It's just I love you. And I found that really hard to deal with for myself as a sort of like little inner battle I was having. And in that process, I was pulling back from her and from a lot of people, my older brother, my family. I started isolating myself and I felt very lonely for a very long time. And fast forward a couple months, I ended up going to Amsterdam for the Inner Peace Conference, where I got to meet some really great speakers. And I watched a lecture by a guy called Dr. Miles Neal, where he was talking about Buddhist psychology. And there were a couple of things that really spoke to me and resonated with me. He spoke about bodhisattva, inner child, and Four Noble Truths. And I'm going to do my best to try to explain these three, but I'm not an expert in them, so please bear with me. The bodhisattva, excuse my pronunciation as well. The idea is that a bodhisattva is somebody whose motivation to grow and be better is based out of compassion. I want to be a better person so that my children have a better father. It's in service to the people around me rather than just so that I can be the best. Inner child is the idea that as adults we have unresolved issues from our past, from our childhood, that might come up in our adult life in places that we really don't want them to come up. And that can be in different ways. You know, you can be very snappy with somebody, or maybe you get really nervous with a presentation that you have to give at some point. It can come up in many, many ways. And then there was the Four Noble Truths. And the way he asks us to approach the Four Noble Truths is the same way a doctor approaches his patient. The patient walks in and says, Doctor, I have a headache. And as humans across the board, we can understand that when somebody has a headache, it's painful, it sucks. There's an understanding that there is pain involved in sickness and illness and in death. It doesn't matter where you're from. That's the first noble truth. The second noble truth I personally find really frustrating because we have to be very, very honest with ourselves about what is going on and how we're actually feeling. And the second noble truth is finding the causes of that pain. We understand that the pain isn't actually the problem, but it's a symptom. So the doctor starts asking questions. Okay, so have you been drinking water, or, you know, et cetera, et cetera. We're trying to find out the root cause of this. And bearing in mind the idea of the inner child, I started to look back and try to figure out, why is it that when I feel trust is broken, I isolate myself and I feel very, very lonely? Because it's the exact opposite that I want to do. I want to open and I want to express as much as I can in those moments of adversity. Long story short, I did a couple of practices. I talked to a lot of teachers about inner child and trying to work through it. And at some point, I realized that the feelings that I was going through as a child when I was like 6 or 7 was the result of neglect, emotional neglect. It wasn't that I was alone or something. My family was around and my brother was around, but the emotional neglect, the feeling of loneliness was very, very present in my life. I'm not here to place any blame or shame on anybody. I really have lived a very privileged and blessed life, and I'm very grateful for all of that. But the idea of neglect turned into a some sort of storyline of, okay, well, if I'm not going to get that, then I guess I got to do this on my own. A sort of sense of independence, which has gotten me really, really far. I did my bachelor's, my master's, hopefully setting up my second company soon. But no matter how far I tend to go, I still miss that idea of appreciation. It hasn't settled in yet. And for a really long time, I would blame my father. I would say, well, he's supposed to say he's proud of me and all these things. But the truth is, he did say that. He was very proud of me for a very long time. And when I told him about the company, I could see the smile, but it wouldn't register past my ears. I couldn't let that sink into my system. So that's why I find the second noble truth very frustrating, because you can't cast the blame on other people. And at some point you have to realize, or I had to realize, that the appreciation that I was looking for was actually for myself. I wanted to feel that love for myself, and I felt that I didn't deserve that. So second noble truth is quite dark in that sense. And then which brings us to the third noble truth, and it tends to be the sort of good news of things, what we can do about it. So, doctor, what are my options? What can we do? What's the course of action? What's the plan? And if that's, you need therapy, or you need to take a yoga class or something, whatever it is, figuring out what needs to be done is important, but it's not everything. At some point, you need to put the plan away and you actually have to do the work. And that's the fourth noble truth. It's actually putting the plan into action, getting to work, and actually rolling out your mat, whatever it is that you need to do. And I don't personally know which industry it is that we need to tackle, or how it is that we can save the world and find utopia. But whatever it is that you're doing, if it's setting up your own company, if it's working for somebody else, building communities, encourage you to be responsible and accountable for what's happening on the inside, and so that we're not evoking whatever pain it is that we're dealing with on the people around us and the environment. I can think of quite a few people in power at the moment who could take a yoga class and try to relax just a little bit more and try to connect a little bit more inwards. Would you mind sitting up straight and just closing your eyes for a second? And often when I ask people to close their eyes and sort of look inwards, we tend to be met with darkness. And I don't mean evil, I just mean darkness. It seems like someone's closed the blinds, or I like the visualization of fog. It seems very foggy, because that lends to the idea that there is something behind that. There's light behind that fog. And it can be very difficult to see that light at the beginning, and for those who don't believe that, there's good news, you're wrong, that there is light on the end of that, on the other side of that fog. Whatever practice it is that we're doing, if it's breathing techniques and yoga, if it's therapy, whatever it is that you're doing, find some way to clear that fog, not just so that I feel better, but so that everybody around me feels better. And there's a quote that my brother shared with me a couple years back, and I've written it down because I want to do justice to her words. And the quote's by Marianne Williamson, where she says, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we're liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others." Thank you.